So positive economics is more dynamic. It tries to understand the current situation of the market. The market should be in a position to accept the good at that price, and then only a demand factor is created. Then people start buying the products. So whether you are measuring me in terms of short-term profit or in long-term profit, profit is the key to success for any business. When the price increases, the quantity falls down. And when the quantity increases, the price falls down. Good morning and welcome to the first session in Unit 1, 5th semester BCom Business Analysis, where we're going to speak about market dynamics. Now for us, the market itself is a very complex structure to understand. The reason being is that the nature of business economics, as we are going to speak, consists of several factors that act dynamically in the market, that keep changing the position of the market, that puts the buyers and sellers into a different league altogether. Now let's look into the nature of business economics. When you look into the nature of business economics here, you have two factors that's coming in, which is the normative and the positive economics. When I say normative economics, it tries to focus on prescriptive statements and it helps to establish a specified goal, which means I'm talking about certain rules and regulations, certain methodology that needs to be followed. So those are called as normative economics. Now, whenever there are certain norms or rules established and you go according to them, or you believe that the market should go according to that, then you are focusing on normative economics. But on the other hand, when you're talking about positive economics, you are trying to focus on how the economic system operates. Primarily, you are trying to understand the root cause analysis, which means what is the effect, what is the cause for that. So positive economics is more dynamic. It tries to understand the current situation of the market, how people are operating. The emphasis needs to be on the factors of how the markets are moving according to the scenario that has been presented, according to the nature that has been happening across in the market. Now, in this level, whenever we concentrate on this word, how they should operate, that means you are trying to understand dynamics very closely. Why? Because the question how is more about understanding the phenomenon, understanding the nature of the market. So this requires a little bit deeper study in terms of understanding the factors. Moving on, let's try to understand. Business economics will try to establish rules that help business firms attain their goals, which is indeed the essence of the word normative. But however, what is important for us is that how is a valid decision that is being taken in the environment? And for that, I would always say that you need to understand economics. You cannot just go with the norms and rules every time, and you cannot believe blindly that market will only flow in a particular pattern. Now, as the dynamics of the world are changing, the market will also change according to this nature. Secondly, what happens here is that the combination of certain important factors like demand and supply, or when we are going to talk about price and income, or we're going to talk about inflation, all these things would make normative economics take a backseat, and we will move into the positive theory. Why? Because there is a combination factors that are coming in there. At the end of the day, when people start arguing, people start debating on this factor, what would be the real business economics to this world? The real business economics lies in understanding the combination of positive and normative economics. Why? Because whenever you are seeing the rules and whenever you are seeing the application, both needs to go hand in hand to understand whether the market dynamics are moving accordingly. And this will also give us an opportunity to learn better, because every time in the market, you will try to get something new. Next, as we move here, we're going to talk about in economics some of the favorite topics that always remain is demand analysis, cost and production, pricing, profit and capital management. Now, this has been the order of economics, I would like to say. Why? Because whenever we are doing economics or whenever we are studying economics, our major focus has always been on demand supply. Our focus has been on cost, on profits, on pricing and capital. Now, these are the factors under which the entire organization or the system is running. So one would not be surprised if the business economics is trying to understand or analyze things accordingly. Many a reason we would also say that the business economics will also try to connect all this together to understand how economics exactly works. So whenever you understand capital, you also understand the profit factor. Whenever you understand cost, you also come out with the production factor. You try to decipher how demand works in the current situation. So every single word as we are learning is interconnected. It is the way how economics exists in this world. Next, let's try to understand demand analysis and forecasting, which is very important for us. A major part of any business decision is completely relying on the demand factor. So demand basically tries to say that how much can you sell in the market? Now, all of us believe that in an English term, when I'm speaking, demand means to say that yes, there is a need for the product. The product is on a much of a hype altogether. But a demand forecast is not just about the hype. A demand forecast is not just about the factors that we are talking now. The demand is more about, is the market ready enough to pay the value of that good, pay the price of that good? Now, as a manufacturer, you will have certain ambitions, you will have certain objectives of selling the good at a particular price. Now, nobody can stop it, nobody can deny it. But as a firm, when you are talking about, the firm will have its own objectives. The market will also have its own objectives. So somewhere the demand for the goods has to match or has to meet the market demands. The market should be in a position to accept the good at that price, and then only a demand factor is created. Then people start buying the products. So this is where the major business decision starts coming in, because the accurate estimates of demands comes into picture. Similarly, management for maintaining and strengthening market positions and earning the profit becomes very, very important. Now, let's talk about the various factors influencing the product, because demand also influences the product factor and provides guidelines for manipulating it. When I use this word manipulating, I'm trying to not get onto the negative term, but I'm trying to make you understand how the organizations will try to reposition themselves in the market. Now, it also provides essential business planning and occupies a strategic place. Why? Because the demand function would tell how exactly we are looking into this managerial economic factors. The main topics covered would be the demand determinants and the demand forecasting. So we are going to look here how these things will really matter. As we move further, we will also talk about cost and production. So when we talk about cost and production, it's a study of economic cost combining the data driven from the firm's accounting records that yield significant cost estimates which are useful for management decision. Now, costing is a combination of accountancy and economics. Why? Because we're not just going to study the unit price, we're also going to study the impact of that price in market. So when the unit price increases or the overall cost increases, what is going to be the impact in the minds of the consumer? Now, many a time we know that cost is not controllable by us. Why? Because the inflation factors are there, the raw material price might go up, or there might be other social factors that can impact the cost. But at given point of time, people would definitely ask, what is the costing methodology that you follow to retain the price at a particular level? So discovering the economic cost ability to measure them and take the necessary steps to retain the value, to retain the price, and continue to deliver as per what we have been looking into matters a lot. Why? Because that is exactly, as a system, we are trying to work upon. So our effective practices that we have been talking about is more about not just cost controlling, but it is also about the fact that how we can retain the system at the same level. Now, the second part of cost analysis is that production analysis, it's much more narrower. Why? Because when we talk about the production part, we are only looking into the technical aspects more. Of course, there is this land, labor, and capital which comes into it when we talk about production. And we also talk about the cost-output relationships, the economics, the diseconomics of scale, production function, and cost control. So all these factors will matter a lot. Now, whenever we are trying to work out on certain things, we also try to understand that the production in physical terms is also related to the cost analysis, because we need to understand the value of each and every product that is produced from the industry. And for that, the associated costs like labor, land, and the materials, when we are talking about the instruments, the machinery, every cost has to be calculated. Then only we can arrive at the final value of the product. The pricing decision, which is a very, very important and interesting function, because pricing is that area of the business which is going to translate the firm's revenue, and the success of the firm largely depends on how the pricing decisions are taken. So at any given point of time, if the pricing is not perfectly done, that means the revenue of the organization will automatically get affected. And this is very interesting for us to know. Why? Because people think that price can be just fit in using an Excel function or some mathematical function. But in reality, pricing is not fixed through any formulas. Pricing needs to be understood from a demand perspective. Pricing needs to be understood from a supply perspective, and also what exactly we are launching at what point of time. So determination of the market in various forms will make you understand the real pricing. So that's why I say the market factors will play a lot of importance here in terms of understanding how the system is completely moving. So this is where I always say to you that the success largely depends on the pricing decision. So whenever you take a decision to price a particular product, you say that this product is 10 rupees. How do you arrive at 10 rupees? Not just with some formulas, not just with an intuition here, but you need to arrive at that pricing looking into all these factors which make it actually revenue benefit for the organization. Now, profit management, as a business organization, I would be interested in profits, and that's the purpose for me to stay in the business. So whether you are measuring me in terms of short-term profit or in long-term profit, profit is the key to success for any business. Which means, are we future perfect? That's the first question that comes in. Why? Because when I started the business, I started with an optimistic note saying that I would be able to make money, I would be able to progress, and I would be able to see growth at the end of the day. But suddenly, if people are going to challenge me out by saying that there's a huge competition, the revenues are going to dip, the profits are going to take a beat, then automatically I would start worrying, because from the market perspective, I am trying to lose out on my expectations. So that's exactly why profit planning and measurement constitute a most difficult area of business economics. Profit is not expectation. Please understand that very clearly. Profit is a measurement of your product value in the market. Now, how your product sells, how your product is perceived, and how the sales keeps moving up and the revenue keeps ticking translates everything into profit. So at the end of the day, you need to understand competition. You need to understand the areas that are being affecting your product and how a company is trying to place and project itself in the market. With all those factors only, we will be able to understand your profit management. Now, moving further, the capital management, which is very, very important, because everybody requires money at some point of time. So as a business house, I would be interested in saying that, can I get some money to start this business? Now, small sums of money are easily available because all of us know today that you can pledge your gold and you can get money. You can borrow money from your friends, relatives, X, Y, Z, and you can do it. But when I'm looking out for a large sum of money, when I'm looking out for a sizable surplus, which needs for in terms of building up the business, the solutions are also complex, and people who want to lend you would also expect a lot of formalities. So which means to say that capital is not an easy term. It's not easily available in the market. One needs to position himself or herself really worth enough to get that particular capital. So the decision involving capital management is taken up by the top management, and the capital management implies the control and expenditure of capital. Now, the capital management, that word itself is so fantastic. Why? Because it is not just about spending, or it is not just about earning back. It is about managing what exactly the company wants at any given point of time. There might be companies which have got excessive capital. There might be companies which are always short of capital. There might be companies which have been raising capital again and again because they want money to function on new projects. Now, as an organization leader, you should be able to understand what is the optimum levels of capital you need to work with so that the organization does not take a beating. The organization is able to go with the flow and you are able to churn out profits year on year. Now, the next one is the meaning of demand. This is very, very important. Why? Because demand refers to a desire for a commodity backed by the ability to pay and the willingness for it. So demand means to say that I have the ability, I have the desire, and I am willing to pay the price. And that is very, very important for all of us at this juncture to know. Demand is not just about market demand. Demand is about that individual factor, that individual personality who understands that he is able to make the payment based on certain factors. He has that ability. He has the capacity to pay. He knows that he would be able to take it. And he has the desire that, yes, I should buy that product. So that is why the demand function is coming. So for example, if a man wants to buy a car and does not have sufficient money to pay, his demand is not satisfied. His demand will not be considered valid at that point of time. Why? Because though his desire is there, but he does not have the money, he does not have the capacity to pay and satisfy his desire. So desire is a combination of willingness, ability, and the fact that the demand factor comes into picture. So that's why it is very, very important to know the meaning of demand. Now, the meaning of demand, three attributes: desire to buy, willingness, and the ability to pay. All these factors are very, very important for us to know. So first thing, we would start with the desire, the willingness to pay. Ability to pay becomes an effective demand, which means to say it is happening there. Only an effective demand figures in economic analysis can be a part of the business decision making. Now, the law of demand, it states that the demand for a commodity increases when the price decreases and it falls when the price increases. So, demand law is very, very clear, which says that price and quantity are inversely proportional. When the price increases, the quantity falls down. And when the quantity increases, the price falls down. So it is interrelated. You know that it's how it's working in terms of other factors remaining constant. Now, the determinants of market demand. So first one would be the price of the product. Naturally, when we start talking about the determinants of market demand, the first thing that comes into the mind is the price of the product. The price of the product is one of the most important determinants of demand in the long run and the only determinant in the short run. So the price and quantity are inversely related. The law of demand states that quantity demanded for a product from which it consumes would likely to buy per unit basis. So when the price of the product becomes attractive, that is the first level of intuition that the customer takes in terms of buying towards that product. If the price is way beyond the range, moment you look into a particular product, the product price itself is like 25,000, 30, 50, 1 lakh or 2 lakh, you are not really driven. Why? Because you would suddenly start taking price seriously and you believe that the price is not within my budget. So moment the price does not appeal you, you will walk away from there. The determinants of market demand remains the fact that it is constant. It implies that income of the consumers, price of the substitutes, complementary goods, the consumer taste and preference, the number of consumers remaining unchanged. So there are so many factors that are coming into this market demand, starting with income, substitutes, complementary factors, consumer taste and preference, number of consumers. Everything matters a lot as we are talking about this demand function. Now, as we start going, the price of related goods. This is very, very important as we are speaking about the Indian market. Of course, it holds good across the globe. But nevertheless, whenever you look into the Indian market, we have related goods, which means to say that similar kind of goods. So whenever we talk about this original versus the first copy, this is one big debate that always happens in the market. People look into the original product first. They look into the price. The price is written as 10,000 rupees. You see a first copy of the product and the product price is only 2,000 rupees. So immediately what people find is the price. The good remains the same. More or less it is equivalent, but the price is way below. So let me take a related good. It's not mandatory that I have to go for that exact branded one. Something similar like that. If not A, B is okay, C is okay, even D is okay for me. So that substituting factor will make a huge difference for the demand function. The more the amount of related good, that means the more the amount of substitutes enter into the market, the original demand function will start taking a back seat. Point number one. Point number two is that you would also start seeing that pricing becomes so intensive, so competitive that the original products have to rethink about shaping them, about putting them into action. Now the other one, like we have been talking about, like tea and coffee, hamburgers and hot dog, or alcohols and drugs are all examples of substitutes. Why? Because these are all factors which keep coming in and out. And by definition, the relationship between demand of the product, price of the substitute is in positive nature. So when the price of the substitute, let's say coffee as a product falls, or as tea will fall, the other one will automatically go up. So that is how the demand for product plays in the market. Complements. Complement means to say that a commodity is deemed to be a complement for another when it complements the use of other. For example, pen and ink. So let me make the example very simple for you. Pen and ink are complementary. That means to say that one cannot function without the another. Similarly, milk and sugar, these are also complementary in nature. Why? Because without sugar adding to that milk, you don't get the entire function done. So similarly, whenever we are talking about products that go hand in hand with each other, that's where the complementary function gets completed. So complements also matter a lot when it comes to the demand function. Now, let's move to the demand function here. The demand function in a mathematical language is a symbolic statement of relationship between the dependent variable and independent variable. So let me just write down here, demand is equal to function of price. Now, whenever we heard about this demand function, it is actually a function of price. So basically, price plays a whole lot of role in terms of determining the demand factor here. Similarly, the demand function states that the relationship demand for a product and its determinants of the independent variable. So let's consider a very, very simple example here. We have taken a commodity X, the other price remaining, other things remaining constant. Let's look into the factors of how we do it. So in the demand function, we are going to bring in like this. This is a short run case. So the quantity demanded for the product X, dx depends on the price. So the demand depends on the price of the product. So there is a dependency factor that we are talking about. Demand is not an individual function. At any given point of time, price will determine the nature of demand as we are talking about. So it is very, very important for all of us, whenever we talk about this demand statement, there is that functionality called as dependency that comes in between us. So based on that only, we would be able to create the demand function. Elasticity of demand, which is a very, very important concept. Now, from the elasticity of demand, we would be talking about what is more important, to what extent the relationship. The concept of elasticity of demand plays a very, very crucial role in business because it helps in maneuvering with the prices and making larger profits. So why is this price elasticity coming? Because the degree of responsiveness of demand to the change in its determinant might be price, which is one factor. Income can also be another factor. As we move, let's try to understand this elasticity of demand. For instance, when the cost of production is increasing, the firm would also increase that money to the customer. Now, what happens here is that the change in price is happening without even the change in cost of production. So what is happening here is that the price is getting moved from one point to another without further any changes, factors coming there. And that's quite normal. Why? Because one side, if the price rises, the other side, the price will also get affected. So that's where exactly the price functionality is moving in. So elasticity tries to say that the demand function would keep varying depending on the nature of the factor here. Price elasticity of demand is generally defined as the responsiveness or sensitiveness of demand for a commodity to the changes in the price. That means to say that sensitiveness, which is very, very important, or the response, which is primarily due to the price factor. If the price increases, then what happens to the product? If the cost of milk goes up, cost of petrol goes up, cost of sugar or cost of wheat or rice goes up, what happens? Immediately there would be a movement in the market. There would be a response by the customer towards the market. And that's exactly where we are talking about the price elasticity of demand. The next one, what is supply? Now, after demand comes the next important topic, and that is supply. Now, supply refers to the total quantity of specific good or services that the consumers are willing and able to sell at different prices over a period. Supply is influenced by production capacity. Now, at any given point of time, supply would refer to the total quantity of specific good or service that is provided they are willing to pay at a different prices here, and supply is influenced by that production capacity levels. Now, the supply determinants of supply, the price of commodity, price of related goods, number of sellers, producers' expectation, production technology, and the government policies, all these factors will matter a lot when it comes to the supply function. Followed by which the supply curve, which is shown as a part of your y-axis and x-axis, which will show the relationship like this. A supply curve is always an inclining curve that's going upward. It slopes upward from the left to that of right, which shows that how the supply moves in the market. Now, the law of supply, it states that other factors remaining constant, the price and quantity supplied are directly related. Higher prices lead to increased supply, while lower prices lead to reduce the supply. So when the price increases, supply increases. When the price decreases, the supply will also come down. Now, the assumptions are there. Production cost remains constant. Technology remains unchanged. Transportation cost is constant. Related goods are also supposed to be constant. And this is where the price elasticity of supply is also being measured. Many things we have taken it in a theoretical form. Why? Because these things in a practical life do not work as constant. They will keep changing. But nevertheless, as we move here, if the price elasticity is greater than 1, then it is elastic supply. That means it increases. If it is less than 1, inelastic in nature. If it is exactly equal to 1, we call it unit elasticity. So these are the factors that you need to know when you are understanding the subject about the unit elasticity, inelasticity, and that of elastic supply. Now, what is a market equilibrium? It occurs where the supply and demand meet. So exactly a point like this, where you would be able to see that the supply and demand is matching. So that's exactly where the buyers would be understanding the price and they would come into the market as buyers to take it. Now, shift in demand and supply, moment there is a rightward shift in the demand, that means to say that is an excess demand. From that, excess supply means when the supply exceeds the demand, we call it as from the excess supply. That's where exactly the prices start fall until the equilibrium is being reached. With this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the factors and figures that have been spoken through these slides would be of a great help to you, both in terms of practical as well as in the theoretical walk of life. In the upcoming session, we would be talking about consumer dynamics, that is the consumer equilibrium. We will be talking about indifference curve. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session. You have a great day.